Hi friends. In the second video in my Mistranslating Catholicism 101 series, I want to turn our attention to the Catholic concept of infallibility. I really think it is one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of Catholicism, and I think it's important to clarify because it can often lead people to scoff at the idea of the papacy in general. Every week I hear or read some iteration of dubious concern expressed at the notion of infallibility. And as a result, I want to take a minute to clarify a couple things about what Catholics actually believe when they discuss the concept of infallibility. Despite the prevalence of all these misconceptions, infallibility is not a limitless stamp of divine approval or some unbridled power to change teaching based on the personal whim of a pope or shifting cultural tides. I would say it's quite the opposite, in fact. It's also important to note that infallibility is not only about papal infallibility either. This charism, or divine gift, as we call charisms, extends not just to the Pope, but to the bishops and all faithful Catholics in communion with them. Here's what the Catechism says. The mission of the magisterium is linked to the definitive nature of the covenant established by God with his people in Christ. It is this magisterium's task to preserve God's people from deviations and defections, and to guarantee them the objective possibility of professing the true faith without error. Thus, the pastoral duty of the magisterium is aimed at seeing to it that the people of God abides in the truth that liberates. To fulfill this service, Christ endowed the church's shepherds with the charism of infallibility in matters of faith and morals. So that's the end of the quote from the Catechism, and if you want to look it up yourself, it's found in section 890, clause 890, forgive me. And I think it's important to note and highlight how the Church's emphasis when discussing infallibility always focuses on the gratuitous gift of grace that it symbolizes, not on the human mechanism used to preserve the faith. So, what is the Catholic understanding of infallibility? To us Catholics, infallibility is actually pretty narrowly defined, at least compared to what I used to think it meant when I held the standard Protestant misconceptions about it. Simply put, infallibility is God's assurance that the College of Bishops, with the Pope at its head, will not lead the Church astray by formally binding faithful Catholics to error. I think the easiest way to clear up the confusion related to this is to focus on infallibility as a negative teaching. That is to say, a divine mechanism that protects us from being formally led into error, even and perhaps especially when church leadership is corrupt. Above all, the concept of infallibility to the Catholic mind emphasizes God's promise to preserve the deposit of faith to the end of time. It's not just some abstract protection, but a visible, concrete reality that we can look to for clarity in times of uncertainty. Now, don't get me wrong. We Catholics absolutely do believe that the Pope is one of the primary human instruments that God uses to protect the faithful, but the power was never his to begin with. Infallibility is a mechanism of God's grace, made possible through God's power alone for the sake of us, God's people. The Pope is called to be the servant of the servants of God, which is my personal favorite papal title. God's gift of infallibility is one way that we, the people of God, as Catholics, are protected and served by the Pope and the bishops in communion with him. So I encourage you to rethink your understanding of infallibility in these ways, because I think it will help you better improve your conversations with Catholics moving forward. And if you're a Catholic, I think it'll help you better understand what the Church actually teaches. I hope this helps you understand infallibility a little better. And to learn more, I encourage you to read Chapter 3 of Lumen Gentium, in addition to the section in the Catechism that talks about it. I think those will both be invaluable in terms of elaborating on what I've talked here. So with that, thank you all for listening. This is also a new little camera setup that I'm trying out. So if you like it, please let me know. All right. Thanks for watching. God bless.